Welcome, everyone. Thank you all so much for being here. Welcome to Women in Leadership. I'm Evelina Dabrowski, the president of Women in Leadership.
And then I'm Sajida Milham. I'm the vice president.
And today we are here with Dr. Haney, president of Moraine Valley Community College. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So we would like to today have a conversation with Dr. Haney about her background and leadership and such like that. And so I guess we could start off. Could you tell us about yourself, share a little bit of your leadership background?
Okay. First, let me say thank you all for coming and for being here this afternoon. And I also want to thank Evelina and Sajida for inviting me to speak this afternoon, and also thank Kelly Grab for her assistance with everything, and also the library for setting up everything and making sure it was all in place when I got here. So I really appreciate it. So I'm just going to, as you know, I'm Pam Haney. I'm the college president. And so first I'm just going to give a little bit of a background about my journey and how I went through the channels of leadership. And so I have a PowerPoint presentation, but it's nothing like too lengthy. But I think it kind of it'll give you like a highlight or an overview of my actual journey. And I'll talk a little bit about the slides. So the first one, this is me. When I was very young, I think I was about 3 years old in this picture, I attended what they call the Head Start program. And Head Start is a federally funded program for low-income families where they help students with their development, child development, and then also they help with nutrition and family and health support. So I always show this picture because this is like my very beginning. And I was so proud to get my graduation certificate. And it also means a lot because my parents were actually struggling and working through a hard time at that point. And the Head Start organization was very instrumental in the development and growth of me as a child. So I always like to give them a plug. Next is a saying. It says, decide what you want, make a plan to get it, and work on it every single day. So this is the next picture. This was me in around the fourth grade. And so I've always liked suits, even as a small child. And I've always liked to write and then also interview people. So my goal was to be a news reporter, and I had a small, at the time, like a Mickey Mouse tape recorder, and when my friends would come over, I would walk. I even have pictures. I have one picture, and I would just like walk around and interview them and ask them questions about the house and what was going on outside. It was very annoying, but to say, very early on, I sort of knew that I wanted to be in some type of field that either had to do with writing or it had to do with speaking, journalism. And so as time went on, I kind of grew and developed in my role. I just don't want to forget here some of the things. So I sort of transitioned. And when I got into college, I entered a lot of the essay contests, like the ones that you see around campus on the walls. It'll say, enter this essay contest. And what I realized in entering those contests, one, it honed my writing skills, and it gave me an opportunity to showcase my writing skills. But I also realized that no one was entering the essay contest. And so all throughout college, I think I paid for books, I had scholarship money, and then I think people caught on that I was the only one entering the contest, and so I was winning all of them. But even when I had competition, I fared very well. So that's just a little bit about me. And then I went on in life. I was an instructor. I taught at Norfolk State University. I taught speech communication and interpersonal communication. And while I was there, I was also an adjunct instructor, and I taught at a military base. And that was a very different experience, teaching students on a military base, but it was a very rewarding experience. After that, after teaching at Norfolk State University, I moved back to the Midwest. I taught at Defiance College for a while, and then after leaving Defiance College, I came to Moraine Valley in 2001 and took an assistant dean's role here. After that, stayed here for a while, moved to Reno, Nevada, worked there, and then I actually came back to Illinois because my husband is from Illinois and he wanted to move back. So this is just a little bit. So one of my mottos is stop being afraid of what could go wrong and start being excited about what could go right. So when I was in college, after I finished my bachelor's degree and my master's degree, I had an opportunity to leave and to enter into a doctorate program in Ohio. So moving from Virginia to Ohio, that's like an 11-hour trip. And here I am. So I didn't know anyone. I just packed up. At the time, I had a gray. It was a gray Chevrolet, but today it would probably look sort of like a Nissan Sentra, like a smaller version, not the large version. So I packed up my car, rented a moving truck, found housing, and I went to Bowling Green State University in Ohio to work on my PhD degree. And that's a picture of me in my office. I was a teacher's assistant, and that's how I paid for college in addition to the fellowship that I received. So I said that to say from the meme, the slide before, is that it was a little frightening because like if you don't know anyone and you just say, oh, I'm just going to jump up and I'm going to just move 11 hours away. But it's one of those experiences that you just have to like face your fear. And at the time I was like, you know what, I'm just going to do it. I'm heading out. And it paid off. I had some challenges though along the way. I'll share some of them later. Next. Nothing is permanent. Don't stress yourself too much because no matter how bad the situation is, it will change. So toward the end of my degree, when I was finishing up the PhD at Bowling Green State University, my father got ill, and so I went home. And so I went home, and I actually finished the dissertation there. I finished writing it at home. And so at the time, I wanted to stay, but I was like, oh, I was needed at home, and so I was kind of torn. And so I said, you know what, I'm just going to go home and I'm going to finish it. It was rough finishing it, like not there, but the situation changed. I was able to complete it. And so nothing is ever permanent. So it might change for the better, it might change for the worse, but it's not permanent. Now this is me. This is what was this? In 2001, when I first started working here at Moraine Valley. And this is in the D building. It's an office downstairs, and I was the assistant dean of academic affairs. As you see the computer, look at the computer and the printer in the back. So this is when I started my journey at Moraine Valley in 2001. And then from there, I had several different roles. In total, I've held seven different positions here at Moraine Valley. Assistant dean, Dean of Academic Services, and then I moved into Dean of Liberal Arts. Then I moved away, came back as an assistant dean because there was an opening, Dean of Science and Business, Vice President, as you'll see here from the newspaper article, and then I moved into the president's role in 2023. And then here is just a picture that they took of me when I first started in the role. It says Pamela Haney, thriving as college president, wife, and mother. So throughout my leadership journey, I think family is very important to me. That's one of the things that I hold dear. And so you have to have some balance. Sometimes people talk about leadership and, you know, being a woman and being in leadership, but also find the balance. What's important to you and my family? People that are in the audience and people who know me will tell you that my family is extremely important to me. They are like the #1 priority to me over work. And then last but not least, that's a picture of me when I was my inauguration, my investiture. And then the last slide is you are enough. So I think sometimes as women in leadership roles, we sort of question ourselves and we say, you know, should we be in this role? Are we enough? Are we good enough? But just you are enough. Just being who you are is enough.
All right, thank you so much for that. I love that you included the quotes. I love it. It shows what kind of person you are. And I guess, would you like to ask our next question?
Yeah, so we want to know, did you always aspire for this kind of leadership role?
So not at first, and I will tell you how it happened. So when I was working at Defiance College, I was an instructor there, and I was teaching speech communication and interpersonal communication courses. And my husband, at the time I was married, my husband and I decided that we wanted to move either to Illinois, because he's from Illinois, or back to Virginia. I'm from Virginia. And so I started applying for roles and applying for positions, and I couldn't get anything in Virginia. And I'm like, what is going on? I could not get one interview. And so I had like 4 interviews in Illinois. And so I said, it must be meant for me to come to Illinois. So then there was this, so then someone that my husband knows said to me, with your background and your skills, there is a position open at Moraine Valley for an assistant dean. And I said, And so at the time, I'd only worked at four-year schools. I didn't know much about the community college system. And so I said, maybe it's time for me to transition into a new role. And I will tell you something that happened when I needed a reference for the position, to interview for the position. And I went back to one of my instructors from graduate school, and I said, I've been teaching for a while. I've been in an instructor's role. I've been a department chair, and I think I'm going to venture out, and I'm going to apply for this assistant dean's job. And I said, but I need a reference. Can you give me a recommendation? And she goes, oh, wow. So she asked if she could see it, and then she came back, and she said, I cannot write you a letter of reference. She said, I do not feel that you are qualified for this role, and I don't think that you will do well in the role. Now, you can imagine my surprise if someone tells you that. And that made me want it even more. So then I really shifted gears, and I said, I really do want to do this, because even though she said that, and it might have been a discouragement at the time, so then I went to another instructor, and he goes, oh, absolutely. He goes, I think you would be great for this role. And so I applied, and nonetheless, I got the position, and then that's when I kind of knew that I kind of wanted to take the route and go into administration. But I said that to say that sometimes, it can be discouraging along the way if something happens, but don't let that deter you from what you want to do.
100%. Yeah, I love that you mentioned the first part because it shows so much about determination. And I guess that this would be a good question to ask next is, what are some of the biggest obstacles you faced as a woman in leadership and how you overcame them? I know that's one of the ones that you did overcome. Were there any others?
So I'll talk about two. The first one is one of the obstacles, I think that one of the biggest challenges is being in the room as a woman leader, like being in the room and not being heard. So I noticed that I would attend meetings, and sometimes it just depends on the meeting. Most of the time, if I'm in a meeting, and there are mostly like males in the room, and so I would be in the meeting, and they would have a question, or they would be talking about something, and so I would interject and have something to say. And it was as if I was not even talking, like I was just not even in the room. And then oftentimes I would say things or make comments, and then someone would say the exact same thing that I had just said, and then all of a sudden, oh, it's this great epiphany. Oh my gosh, we should do that. And I'm like, am I not sitting here? I just said that. So, that was one of the obstacles or challenges that I had to face. And I would say another is just being in a leadership role and feeling like a sense of loneliness. Like you can have people surrounding you, but then you can also feel lonely. Like you have colleagues, you have your friends, your colleagues, but then sometimes you feel like I'm kind of like isolated, or I'm in this bubble, and there are certain things I can't say, and there are certain things that I can't share, and that creates a sense of loneliness. And so how I would overcome that is that in meetings, I'll talk about the first thing. In meetings, I practice what I call speaking in the room, like now not just saying things for the sake of saying them and not making sense, but I practice speaking. Like I might raise my hand and I might say, I have a question about something, or, can you speak more about this? And sometimes I already know the answer and I really don't need to hear it, but it's practice. It's practice of like speaking in front of people, interjecting, making yourself present or known in the room. Also, I read this book, and I can't think of the title, but it just kind of popped in my head. I read this book about like your posture in meetings and how your presence in a meeting can kind of change the atmosphere or change how people look at you. But so I'm not saying go in and be someone that you are not, but just kind of learn how to navigate the situations and, learn how to put yourself into the space. And the other piece of it, when I talked about the loneliness piece. You have to have a good support system around you. Not everyone is going to support you, but have like one or two people that are confidants that you can go to and you can talk to. When times get hard, and then you have someone that you can kind of rely on and go to in that space.
Yeah, amazing. That's why we wanted to create this club, to kind of have that community feel and have those people you could rely on, which I love. But I did want to circle back to when you said that you were getting your assistant dean role, that you were really set on doing that. My next question for you is that what motivated you to step up and become the president of Moraine Valley?
Oh, good question. Well, I've been at Moraine for a very long time. I've been at Moraine since 2001. And I think what motivated me is that I really do love Moraine Valley. So I applied for a position someplace else before, but it went to another candidate. But I think my heart is really at Moraine Valley. And I wanted to be able to use all of the knowledge that I've gained, all of the things that I've learned, all of the professional development trainings that I've had. I wanted to be able to use that here at Moraine Valley. And I think that's what made me apply. And in my heart of hearts, I said, I know that I can do this job. I know that I can make a difference. And I know that I'm going to be engaged because I love the people here. I love the students here. And I just love the campus itself. Like my sons, I have two sons. They're older now. And they actually grew up on this campus. Like they went to the camps. They attended things on the event. So we feel like Moraine Valley is our home. And so I said, what better place to be a president than in your own home?
I love that. Thank you. Would you like to ask the next question?
Is there something that you wish you had known earlier in your career? And if so, what advice would you give to us now?
I think earlier in my career, if there is something, I would say that wisdom comes from experience. I think sometimes you get into roles and you say, you know, oh, I'm going to jump into this role and I'm going to do this and I'm going to make things happen, but it really comes from the experience that you have. You can go into a role and you can like think that you know it all. You can think that you have all the knowledge and all the information, but really that experience is going to make the difference. It's going to make the difference in that. And one other thing I wanted to say, and no matter how much you have like technical ability or you think you have book smarts, or as people say book smarts, or skills, you still need some level of experience and some level of wisdom to operate in those roles. And I think the other advice that I would give is to sell yourself because you are a brand. I think you might think, I don't know how I don't know how you would view yourself, but I think like growing up, coming through the ranks, being in leadership positions, you have to see yourself as a brand. It's like, what is it that you have to give? And then I think if I could go back and tell my younger self something, I would just say, know your worth, be confident, know that you're a brand, know that you bring something to the table, and know that it's different. So you might not be like someone else in the room. You might be completely different, but that's you. That's who you are. So I might not sound like someone else. I might not look like someone else. I might not act like someone else. And I'm not, I would like to say I don't think I'm the typical what people would say as like college president, because I like to have fun, I like to engage, I like to interact with the students, I like to kind of get out there, and sometimes people was like, oh, you think you're doing too much, and I'm like, no, this is who I am. So just be who you are, no matter what that is, and let your light shine. Don't be afraid to let your light shine. Just don't be afraid to be your authentic self.
To branch off of that, I wanted to ask, like, how do you say that know your worth, but also how do you manage that, like, kind of imposter syndrome? Like, you want to know your worth, but you also want to be weary of the fact that you don't know everything. And, like, I feel like sometimes you might drown yourself out a little, but you also want to be present in the room and be able to, like, have that space in the room. Like, how do you balance that? Like, knowing that you need to learn stuff, but also knowing your worth.
So I would say, understand that you don't have to know everything. So if you're like, for example, I can be in a meeting and with my colleagues, and I don't know everything that they're talking about. I might know some of it, but if I have a question, I'll say, can we back that up? Can you go over that again? Back up a little bit. Can you explain that? And so I don't go in feeling like I have to know everything, or I have to be the smartest person in the room, or I have to have all the knowledge or all the experience. I just accept like where I am, and then I go in, and then that's how I present myself, and I just live in my presence of where I am. And so, and if I don't know everything, it's okay. And then the other part is, as a leader, you have a team of people around you. And so my rule of thumb is to hire everyone who's smarter than I am. So, and I have a team of people who support me, and they're much smarter than I am. So that helps me as well. So I can rely on them. I can call on them, and I know that I don't have to go in knowing everything. And so then you don't have that imposter syndrome of feeling like, oh, I'm less than, or I don't know enough. And then if you feel that way, or you think you have feelings, then you say, well, what can I do to get over this? What's the confidence builder? What am I missing? What do I need to learn? Do I need to read more articles? Do I need to go to more conferences? Do I need to reach out to mentors or people who can help me? So if you feel like you have a deficit in an area, or there's something you don't know, then work towards learning it. But then in the meantime, just know your strengths, and then just gauge yourself toward what your strengths are.
Amazing. Thank you. And so you mentioned how having a good team and family is super important to you. I guess my next question would be, how important is it to have a mentor to grow as a leader specifically?
I think mentors are very important. So I have a mentor. Some people that on campus have met my mentor during my inauguration when they sort of like installed me as being president. My mentor is a man, and he is a president at a university in San Diego, and he's been my mentor for a very, very long time, and he has been very instrumental. So I can pick up the phone at any time, and I can call him, and he will stop, and he'll say, hey, let's talk through this. Let's figure out where you are. And then also with him being like a male mentor, I think it gives me like a different perspective, because sometimes if I'm looking at something in one way, he might say, I'm coming from it from a different angle. And sometimes he's like, okay, he was like, tell me who's in the room. Tell me what the dynamics are. And then he was like, okay, I'm going to give you the male point of view of what you're saying. And then I'm going to tell you, you tell me what you're going to say, and I'm going to tell you what I think about it. So I think it helps to have a mentor. Mentors are very important to guide you. But then you also need to have people in your corner that I call, quote unquote, sponsors. And those are people who will like speak out for you. Those are people that can say, they can vouch for you, to say, I know her or I know him, and they are very, I know who they are, and they are very good people. They have character, competence, experience. So the mentors help guide, but then also have those people in your corner that you know are going to go to bat for you in a situation when you really need them.
Our next question is, how do you encourage women who are feeling discouraged?
Discouraged. How do I encourage? That's a good question. So I would say, shake it off. No, I'm just joking. No, but I would say, if you're feeling discouraged, it's okay to have that feeling. It's okay to own your feelings. It's because I've had moments where I felt discouraged, and I go home and I'm just like, oh, this is terrible, and you feel that way. So you own it, but don't stay in it. So don't wallow in it. Don't let it go fester on for like day 2, day 3, day 4, and find things to think of. Look back on your past and like keep a journal of all the things that have happened to you that have been positive, and then keep the journal of things that have been that haven't been positive. So you can look back and you can say, okay, oh, this happened, but look at how I got past it. I got over it. This is what happened. I was able to get through it. So sometimes when you have that reference point of being able to go back and look at things that have happened and then how you overcame them, then you can say, you know what, this is not going to last forever. This is just a temporary moment, and I'm going to come out of it. The other thing I would say, if you're discouraged, is find what's your happy place. Find something that makes you happy, or then try to like kind of figure out, why am I discouraged? Why am I feeling this way? Is it something that I've done? Is it the situation I'm in? Can I change it? Is there anything I can do about it? And if there's something you can do about it, change it. If you can't do anything about it, then own it and then move on.
I love that. Thank you very much. And so, what are the 3 most important skills for any leader to have, not just us as students who aspire to be leaders, but anyone in general?
I would say interpersonal communication,
is a good skill as a leader. You want to be able to connect with people. You want to be able to talk to people. And then also, in the interpersonal communication, have some grace. As a leader, you always want to give people grace. Also, I would say after the interpersonal communication, like your character is really important. It's your name. It's going to take you far. And then I think the third thing that I would say, I said interpersonal skills. I said your character. And then I would say, trying to think, a third one would just be knowing who you are, as a person, knowing who you are, knowing what your strengths are, knowing what your weaknesses are, knowing what your barriers are, knowing what you're comfortable with, and then knowing what things you're willing to take and what things you're not willing to take. Because you want to make sure that you're not in a situation where you're compromising your ethics or things that you truly believe. So those are just some of the things that I would say would make, that's what I would say, those three things. But I did have one other thing that I wanted to share, and I wrote it down. So this is something, oh my gosh, that I say all the time. Where is it at? Hold on. I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget it. Oh, I also wanted to say that as a leader, one of the things I wanted to say is that fear, you have to be courageous. And being courageous, when people are fearful, it doesn't mean that, that you won't be afraid. Because sometimes you're gonna have fear and that you're gonna be afraid. But the thing that you have to do is you have to have the courage to work through the fear and push through it. And that's the most important part. Because there are times when I will say, and I will tell one of the people, I was like, oh my gosh, I have to go do this presentation or I have to do something. And then I'm just like, okay, I'm breathing. And I'm dancing around in my office because I was like, I'm going to do this. It's going to happen. It's going to be great. And so you're self-talking, you're talking to yourself, you're motivating yourself. And sometimes you do fear. You do have those jitters, but then you work through it and you push through it. I had a situation, I like stories, I'm sorry. So I had a situation once when I first started as vice president, and I was just so used to like working in my other roles, setting up the room, making sure everything was okay, and then just sitting in the back. And I was vice president, and I said, this is I think the first week, and there was an event, and someone said, aren't you supposed to be up front at the table? And I said, no, it's just like false humility. I was like, no, I'm just going to sit in the back. And someone said to me, and I won't say her name because she'll know, and someone said to me, they said, you get up there to the front of the room because that's where you're supposed to be. They said, own your position, get from in the back. This is how they said it. Get from back here and you go up to the front of the room and you be the VP that they hired you to be. And I was like, okay. It was like one of those like eye-opening moments where you say, okay, I'm in this. I have to do it. I really have to do it. And then there was a vice president who used to be here. He's since retired. And I think in his own way, he was sort of like prepping me because we would be in meetings, like we would be in like at conferences here that were held here, and people would ask a question and he would just say for no reason, he would say, oh, well, Dr. Haney is in the room. She can answer that question for you. And I'd be like, what? I didn't say anything. And so he would put me on the spot. And then I realized what he was doing. At every meeting, he would put me on the spot. And so in each time, I got a little bit more comfortable. And then the next time, I got even more comfortable. But he was like, without saying it, he was really like training me and helping me along the way. But I found what I wanted to say. I wanted to say, this is something that I say from time to time, and I think it's very important. Arrogance will push you forward faster than you should go, and fear will keep you in your current place longer than you should be. So it's a balance. You have to find that balance of where you are and where you want to go and how you get there.
I think we touched on this slightly. My question would be, what advice do you have for young women aspiring to be leaders? You did kind of touch on it, but if you have anything.
Well, you want more advice from me?
Oh yeah.
I think I've sort of talked about it. Make sure that you know your worth. And, and it's okay if you don't know what you want to do. That's okay. And it's okay if you try different things. But I would say, you kind of have like when it's time to do something different. When you want to do something different. When you want to move on. When you have the urge to do something that's really like not what you're doing. And so you have to go with that. And I wouldn't say like jump at every opportunity that comes your way, but, weigh the odds and, take risk, take some risks. I've had some times when I've had opportunities and I let them pass. And then I've had times where I've had opportunities and I didn't take them, and it was best that I did not. But, you just kind of have to weigh that in your mind because you don't want to live with regrets. And I think a couple of times, I'm trying to think if I have any regrets. Maybe one, but it's not related to leadership. It's something I was going to do in grad school, and I changed my mind. But I would say you don't want to live with any regrets. So really kind of weigh your options when you're making decisions. Like when I moved from Virginia to Ohio, I mean, that was a big leap for me, moving by myself. But I'm glad that I did. I'm glad that I took the opportunity. I moved. I made that leap because it took me to where I am now.
All right. Well, I know you touched on some stories already, and you said you love stories, and I love listening to them. Do you have any other stories that you'd like to share with us? Something monumental that happened maybe earlier in life that made you, decide where you wanted to go in terms of career? Anything monumental?
I will share this story. So I was in a position, and I went to a conference, a leadership conference, and there was a woman there, and she said to me, she was talking to me, and I think she just assumed that I didn't have like all of my credentials because at the time she said, "Oh, you look so young," and then she said, "Well, I will tell you this." She said, "If there's, pursue what you want." She said, "Just go for it. Don't hold back. Just do everything that you can now." And at the time, I did not have children. And she was saying, it's okay if you have children and you're at that stage. But she said, you have an opportunity now to just like go for it. She says, once you have a family, once you have kids, she says, for most women, it gets harder because you have different responsibilities. And she was correct, because when I took this role, my youngest son was leaving for college. And I remember because my first in-service as president was the day of the in-service as president. The first in-service I had where I speak to the entire college, that's the in-service day. And so I had to write this speech, and, I was sort of nervous about it. And I'm thinking, okay, this is my first commencement to the entire college. And the night before, I had to take my son to college to move him in. So I'm just thinking, oh my gosh, I have this on my mind. I'm trying to move him into the dorm. But I said that to say, if this role had come along, I would say 2 years ago, I don't think I would be as effective as I am now, because during that time in my life, I was very engaged in my kids and their athletics and their scholarly activities in high school. And so I wanted to be a part of that. So I think all of the timing worked out perfectly for me, because he was leaving to go to college. My oldest was out of college, and then I could actually focus on this role. So had I received this role like a year prior, because I did apply for a role someplace else, had I received it, I would not have been able to do it like I can do it now. And so I think it was all about the timing, and it was perfect timing for me. I couldn't see it at the time, but it all worked out the way it was supposed to.
Do you have any tips with juggling multiple responsibilities like you were sharing?
I do. If you have a partner, have them do all the work at home. No, but you need help. You need support. You can't do this by yourself. So you have to have a support team, whether it's at work or it's at home. You have to have people help you out. You have to have people chip in where they can. You find out that you have less time, and so you have to make use of your time, and then you try to decide. Me, I'm like a scheduled person. I'd be like, okay, on Monday I'm going to do this, on Tuesday, Wednesday, but it doesn't always work out that way. But you need a support system. You have to have people help you. mean, if you can do it on your own, great, but I can't do it. There's no way I could do this on my own. And then don't feel guilty, like if you can't do something, and then make time for yourself. You need the me time. So sometimes you just need to sit down and just be quiet and just don't do anything. You know, you don't have to be working, and you don't have to feel guilty, because I would always be like, if I'm not doing something, then I will feel guilty. I need to be doing something. If I'm not working, then I need to be washing clothes or folding clothes or washing dishes or maybe prepping meals or, you know, cleaning out the refrigerator or cleaning out the freezer or, you know, or I'm under the crawl space in the house pulling out old old Rubbermaid bins, going through them, sorting them out. So I always felt like, you know, I have to be doing something because it makes me feel useful, but you don't. You really need time to rest, because you will wind down, and, you know, then you're no good for anyone else. So you have to take care of yourself.
That's really like, you talk a lot about building yourself and like making yourself better and improving yourself, and then also having good relationships with other people. Like, how do you advise people to go about building good relationships and having those strong connections with people?
For me, I have friends or people who understand that I may not be able to be there all the time, or they can't be there all the time, but when we need each other, then we're there. And so I think that's how you build strong relationships. And I don't have like tons of friends, or I don't make connections with a lot of people, but I do have like a circle of people that are what I call my inner circle. And that's, you know, my relationship building. And from time to time, we might do something or we might not. You know, sometimes we could go weeks without talking, and then we're on the group chat, and then it's just like, it's like all night. We're just group chatting back and forth, sending memes, sending funny things. So, you know, I send memes too. So it's like, you know, it's finding that space and just having those relationships, but understanding that some days might not be good days for me. And then if you're in my inner circle and you're my friend, you understand that and you can respect that. And like some days, you know, I might just say, you know, I can't talk on the phone today. I'm just not feeling it. And I know there was a time when I just said, there was a time I think I just disappeared for like, it had to be a month, because I was just not in a good headspace. And I had so much going on, and I felt so overwhelmed, and I just said, I just need to zone out. I need to focus on me. I need to just like regroup and redirect. And when that time was over and I came back and I was crazier than ever, and they were like, get back in here on this group chat, you know. So, you know, you have to have friends that understand that, who won't get upset and say, oh, you know, this is how, you know, oh, she's this now, so she's not communicating with us. So just, you know, people who understand, and then you understand for them as well. And if they need something, try to be there.
Yeah, I love that you highlight the importance of having that balance. Yeah. Does anyone in the audience have any questions for Dr. Haney?
Did you get to tell that instructor that you got the job?
You know, you know what? I did not, but someone did it for me.
Hi. I think in this time and climate, students, we're so run in a get up and go society, and it's very inspiring to see so much hardworking people, but there are some people that fall behind, and it's really hard to get yourself back up. Do you have any advice for those students that just fall behind or are lost, especially in like this time and day?
I would say for those students, you have to find a support system, and you have to find people that can help you. Like here on campus, take advantage of the resources that are here on campus over in the student center, because there's someone who's always there that can help you. And then turn to people. Sometimes there are people who've been in the same situation that you've been in, and they can reach out to you and kind of lend support. But it's like, it almost like it comes from within. And I know it sounds kind of rough to say, but sometimes you just kind of have to dig deep and just know that the situation can turn around or I can make a change. But then if you feel like that you really can't, you know, I don't know if it's it could be an instructor. If you go to an instructor and they can't help you, then they can like say to you, this is where you go to receive help, or just go to someone on campus. But just, I would say reach out, because you don't want to put yourself in a situation where you're alone. Take advantage of resources and then just kind of get the help that you need and just try to lift yourself back up.
To build off of that, I think I have a question. You talked a lot about your personal relationships. How would you give advice about making professional relationships, either with professors or with colleagues, like building your professional network?
Oh, that's really good. Don't tell them anything. No, just joking. I would say with building your, well, that's kind of serious, but with building your professional network, I would just say make sure that you're surrounding yourself with people that you know can be of support and that can help you. And then also, a lot of people can serve as mentors. And I think the other thing is that sometimes people think that a mentor is someone that's always in a position that's above you, but that's not true. For me, when I first started working here, I think every secretary, administrative assistant on this campus was a mentor to me. They would say, don't do that. Don't send that email to that group of people, not in that tone, or change this. So it's like anyone can be a mentor to you.
Does anyone else in the audience have any questions?
Thank you. I have a question. You're talking about how your journey in here getting to Moraine Valley, and I have a question just about, I'm trying to think about how I can properly word it. Just more so in finding purpose and passion. I feel like those are two words that get circled around a lot, especially at being such a young age. I know you did speak a little bit about exposure and imposter syndrome, but do you have an epiphany or an aha moment where you felt as though you had reached a moment where you felt satisfied or felt that you were on the journey of that, or even never feeling satisfied at all? I feel like passion, purpose, those two can be a lot, mean many different things to many different people, especially in leadership, whether that's like career-wise or socially or spiritually. So if you could just speak a little bit about that on your personal experience.
So I would say, like, for example, my passion, I think I'm still in some ways searching for that true passion. I think my purpose, I do feel that my purpose was to be, just to start off as an instructor and then to work in education where I can help students. And because I've always loved my community. I've always loved helping people in the community. But I think, it takes some time to kind of figure out. And I would always say this, well, what is my purpose? What is my purpose for being at Moraine Valley? Am I really supposed to be here? What am I supposed to be doing? But then when I would see changes that would happen, and then there would be people who would say to me, that thing that you did, or that decision that you made, it really made an impact on students. And then that's how I would know, this is my purpose. And you do have a moment where, and I can't recall when that moment would have been, but you do have a moment when you say, I know that this is my purpose, and it will come to you. And so, and like passion, like my passion, I don't know what the people's like, oh, your passion. What is your passion? What is your passion? I don't know what my passion is. I think I'm still learning what my passion is, but I do know what my purpose is. And I guess I really can't give you an answer to the passion piece. If I had to think about it, like of all the things, and people ask me this all the time, what is your passion? What do you really like doing? What is your, I don't know. I don't know what it is. I do know I love writing. I know that. I have like notepads on top of notepads. I have like tons of notepads at my home. And so I'm, okay, so the people in the audience who are laughing give me notepads for holiday gifts. That's why they're laughing. But I love to write. And if anything, my passion would probably be writing, because I wanted to be a writer. I had an instructor that in college that kind of gave me some bad advice, and so I didn't stick with the career of writing. So I love to write. That is my passion. If I could go back and do one thing over, I think I probably would go back and like be a writer. I've always wanted to write for either like newspaper or television or something. And I think I would actually go back and do that. Like in my spare time, I write articles. So that would probably be a passion that I have, but I don't make time for it. That's the sad part. And I need to do a better job of making time for the things that really make me happy and the things that I really enjoy. So see, I just talked myself right through what my passion is.
Anybody else have a question?
I guess if there are no more questions, I did want to speak about how you always talk about like community and things like that. That's why we started with the Women in Leadership Club, which I encourage all of you, if you are not in it already, to join. We wanted to create something at Moraine Valley that not only women can come to, but where everyone can come and learn about women in leadership roles, but also be there for one another, have one another to talk to each other, which you highlight that is super important. I don't know. I guess I don't have any other questions. Do you? I don't have any other questions either. So I just wanted to say thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much to everyone who also came to listen to your inspiring words. I'll take so much with me wherever I go, and I appreciate you being here, appreciate the time, and I appreciate everyone being here, and thank you so much.
Thank you.